According to Oregon's Community Alliance of Tenants, over 40% of households in Oregon are renters. And if you fall into that category, you probably want to pay close attention to this story. This week, the state announced landlords could raise rent next year by 14.6%. Believe it or not, that's in line with a law passed 3 years ago that promised to cap rent increases. The cap is calculated at 7% plus the consumer price index measure of inflation. And with inflation soaring, to many people, that law certainly feels like it's failing the people it was meant to protect. It's important to note that this cap applies to housing that's at least 15 years old. Newer rentals are not a part of it. For context, a one-bedroom apartment in Portland going for $1,500 a month now could have rent increased to over $1,700 if the landlord instituted the maximum increase. We heard from the president of the Portland Area Rental Owners Association, who believes most landlords will not raise rent by that maximum threshold, but don't expect your rent to stay stagnant either.
The way it's set up right now is if you're a landlord, you're a business. And if your costs go up, just like at your restaurant, or the Home Depot, when they had to pay more for the materials that they sell, they charged the end user more.
But there is a very valuable resource that's going largely unnoticed by tenants, and this only applies for those of you renting in the city of Portland. According to the Portland Housing Bureau, if your rent increases more than 10% next year, you can request what's called mandatory renter relocation assistance. That means your landlord has to help pay for you to move if you want out. Here's a look at how much your landlord would have to pay you depending on the size of your current unit. For a studio, it's $2,900, a one-bedroom $3,300, two-bedroom jumps up to $4,200, and anything 3 bedrooms or larger would be a $4,500 payment. But there are some exceptions to the rule that you really need to be aware of. Like I said earlier, you have to live within Portland city limits. You cannot live with your landlord, and your lease needs to be month to month or longer, like a 1-year agreement, for instance. You can't have like a week-to-week agreement. If your landlord is actively serving in the military and you're renting their home during their tour of duty, you don't qualify. And if there's a reason you're being evicted, what's called a for-cause termination, you do not qualify for mandatory renter relocation assistance. And again, this is only if your rent goes up by more than 10% and you want to move out. If you want to stay where you are now, you'll have to pay whatever the rent increase is, which could be up to that 14.6% that's allowed by state law. For some historical perspective, though, the average rent increase for apartments covered by the rent cap law has only gone above 10% once, and that was way back in 2015. I guess not way back, but back then. That's according to a 2019 report the company CoStar put together for KGW. But again, that report only looks at averages. So really, there were certainly a number of tenants hit with increases of more than 10% that year. If you have questions about mandatory renter relocation assistance, take a look at your screen, because you can contact the help desk at the city's rental services office by calling 503-823-1303 or by sending an email to rentalservices@portlandoregon.gov.